will come to order in a moment or two, but first of all, I would ask television cameras to please leave. Okay, I want to welcome the Minister to our committee today. And our committee meeting will be divided into two parts. We will continue from 3:30 to 4:30 our study on the loss of Canadian citizenship for the years 1947, 1977, and 207. And then that will go until 4:30, and from 4:30 to 5:30 we will be speaking to the Minister about her estimates. And so I think the Minister has an opening statement, but before that I want to welcome her officials as well, Mr. Richard Fadden, Deputy, and Mr. Wayne Gannam, Mr. Wayne Gannam, Chief Financial Officer and Director General of the Finance Branch. Welcome to all of you. The Minister, I think, is going to make an opening statement concerning both parts of our agenda, and we will then get into questions from our committee members. So I'll pass it over to you, Madam Minister. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Honourable members, je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président, et honorable.
I would like to thank you, Mr. Chair, and the honourable members.
My department's main estimates for fiscal year 2007-2008, for which I seek the committee's approval. I propose to cover only some of the major items in my remarks and address any areas of particular interest to the committee in the time allotted for questions. Je me propose de traiter seulement de quelques-uns des principaux éléments.
I will only cover some of the major items in my remarks and address any areas of particular interest to the committee in the time allotted for questions.
The committee will note a decrease of $58.3 million in the department's operating expenditures. This is due largely to the end of special temporary funding during the last fiscal year to address short-term pressures, in particular a backlog in the processing of grants and proofs of citizenship. This special funding helped to bring that backlog in citizenship grants and proofs down to a much more manageable size. During the 2004-2005 fiscal year, the number of applications for citizenship grants stood at nearly 175,000. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to report that as of March 2007, the number of applications has been reduced to fewer than 27,000. This is an 85% reduction from the 2004-2005 inventory. We achieved another significant reduction in the number of applications for proof of citizenship. In March of this year, the inventory stood at 17,500. Just over a year ago, this number was 22,000. Under Vote 5, Grants and Contributions, there is an increase of $20.5 million. The major items here are a reduction of $114.6 million because of the transfer of the Toronto Waterfront Revitalization Initiative to Treasury Board Secretariat, and an overall increase of $135.1 million for immigration settlement programs. In the 2006 budget, we increased settlement funding by $307 million over 2 years. Settlement funding, as you're probably aware, had remained at the same level for several years prior to this increase. That means more support for language training, more support to help newcomers find a job, and more family support for those building a new life in Canada. Now, this is an unprecedented increase, one that our government is very proud of. And these are just a few of the major items, and I understand that the committee may wish clarification or explanation of any of the many other items in the estimates. My officials and I would be happy to respond to any questions that the committee might have in that regard. As the committee is aware, we continue to work to resolve the question of so-called lost Canadians. When I made my first appearance before this committee in February of this year, I outlined for the members the steps that my department has been taking to address this challenge. In fact, I'd like to state for the record my appreciation of the efforts that my department has been making under sometimes difficult circumstances to ensure that every single person whose citizenship is in question is treated with the utmost respect. J'aimerais souligner, pour votre information,
I would like to draw to your attention how grateful I am for the effort that has been undertaken by people in my department, because people are often in difficult situations and they have been working in difficult situations to ensure that every single person whose citizenship is in question is treated with the utmost respect.
1,000 visits to our website for information on citizenship. The number of cases of individuals in Canada whose citizenship status needs to be resolved is still limited. When I was last here, I mentioned that there were about 450 such cases. As of May 24th, that number was down to 285. Recognizing the need to further inform the public, I have instructed my officials to increase their efforts to raise awareness of this important issue. To this effect, we have launched a public information campaign directed at those who may have lost or are at risk of losing their citizenship or wish to regain it. This campaign includes advertisements in major daily and regional newspapers. These public notices include where and how to contact the Department for help in any lost citizenship issues. Ces avis publics indiquent de quelle façon communiquer.
These public notices tell people how to contact the department for help in any lost citizenship issues.
Since January 2007, we have received more than 45,000 calls at our call centres. Of these, about 2,100, or around 4%, have been about citizenship. Mr. Chair, just over 2,000 of those callers have had their Canadian citizenship confirmed. Similarly, in July, the first round of renewals for permanent resident cards will come due. In anticipation, we have already begun a public awareness campaign aimed at permanent residents, reminding them that these cards need to be renewed every 5 years for those traveling outside the country. Like you, I've heard the stories, many of which have been told in touching detail before this committee. I've seen the thoughtful proposals from witnesses who have offered their suggestions for resolving this situation. Using the powers available to me as Minister under the Citizenship Act, I acted to resolve lost Canadian cases as quickly as possible. I have so far obtained approval through the Governor and Council for a special grant of citizenship to 49 individuals who did not meet the provisions within the current legislation for a regular citizenship grant, but whose circumstances called for special considerations. During my appearance here in February, I also sought the committee's advice on what additional steps we could take to ensure that everyone who should be recognized as a citizen of this wonderful country is recognized as a Canadian. And it's with keen interest that I have followed your study of this issue and am pleased to announce that this fall I will be tabling in the House a bill proposing a series of amendments to the Citizenship Act. These amendments will address the most pressing circumstances that the committee has been considering. In developing these proposals, we are seeking to meet several key objectives. People need stability, simplicity, and consistency in their citizenship status, features which were not always highlighted in the present and former acts. Citizenship should normally be conferred by law, not by filling in an application with the same rules applicable to everyone. At the same time, we must protect the value of Canadian citizenship by ensuring that our citizens have a real connection to this country. The legacy of Canadian citizenship should not continue to be passed on through endless generations living abroad. To do otherwise would be to sell our citizenship short. It would not be fair to all those who have come to Canada and made it their home. The following are the basic outlines of the proposal that we're working on. First, nothing in these proposals will take away citizenship from anyone who is now a citizen of Canada. And I'd like to repeat that. Nothing in these proposals will take citizenship away from anyone who is now a citizen of Canada. This is not about taking away citizenship from anyone who now has it, but rather about correcting past problems and protecting citizenship for the future. Second, Anyone born in Canada on or after January 1st, 1947 will have their citizenship confirmed even if they lost it under a provision of the 1947 Act. The only exceptions would be those born in Canada to an accredited foreign diplomat or who have personally renounced their citizenship as an adult. Third, anyone naturalized in Canada on or after January 1st, 1947 will have their citizenship confirmed even if they lost it under a provision of the 1947 Act. The only exceptions would be those as above who renounced their citizenship as an adult or whose citizenship was revoked by the government because it was obtained by fraud. Fourth, anyone born to a Canadian citizen abroad, mother or father, in or out of wedlock, on or after January 1, 1947, is a Canadian citizen and will have their citizenship confirmed if they are the first generation born abroad, but no further. We believe that these proposals would resolve the issue of citizenship for most of those people whose status is currently in question. They would also eliminate onerous and confusing retention requirements and provide assurance that this situation will not be repeated in the future. These proposals will resolve most, but not all, of the situations that have arisen. Those are rare cases where the facts turn on circumstances of births outside Canada prior to January 1, 1947, and where citizenship is in doubt, would remain. Now, given the variety of individual circumstances in these cases, I believe that we must continue the current approach to judge each case on its merits and, as warranted, use the powers available to me as Minister to bestow special grants of citizenship under Section 5(4) of the Citizenship Act. This would also be the case for unforeseen situations that we have not yet dealt with. Mr. Chair, I know that time is running out, and I'm looking forward to your questions. In conclusion, let me reiterate what I have said to the committee in the past. The government takes this issue very seriously. Monsieur le Président, je sais que le temps file et
Mr. Chair, I know that time is running out, and I am looking forward to answer your questions. In conclusion, let me reiterate what I have said to the committee in the past. The government takes this issue very seriously.
Canadian citizenship is one of the most valuable things that we can possess. We need to do whatever we can to ensure that it is conferred fairly and rationally in a way that protects our country and our citizens. The proposals that I put before you today are in no way intended to be the final word, as they will need to be more fully fleshed out in a bill for parliamentary review. I have outlined them today to make clear that the government feels that the Act needs to be amended to deal with the most pressing issues. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Minister, for your statement. I'm sure we have many questions. I guess as per the agenda, maybe we could focus on the first half on the loss of Canadian citizenship and on the second half on the estimates. So I will go now, first of all, to Mr. Telegdi.
Thank you very much, Chair. Welcome, Minister. Just before I get in there, in terms of your proposal for anyone born to a Canadian citizen abroad, mother or father, in and out of wedlock on or after January 1st, 1947, excludes Mr. Joe Taylor, whose case you are appealing to the Supreme Court after it was the government was ordered to restore citizenship. We heard from members, witnesses this morning who were born before January 1st, 1947, who are children of war brides and whose daughter is actually serving in the Canadian military, looking forward to go to Afghanistan. And here we have a child of a war bride who is now a grandmother, going to help to take care of her grandchildren, while the mother is fighting for Canada in Afghanistan would not qualify under this provision. Minister, the previous government had $20 million allocated for changing the Citizenship Act and bringing it into compliance with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The previous ministers under the previous government asked this committee, Committee of Citizenship and Immigration, to produce reports so we could give guidance to the department as how that could be done. These reports were virtually unanimously passed through this committee. Updating Canada's citizenship laws, its time, received unanimous support in this committee. The other one, referring to citizenship revocation, a question of due process and respecting charter rights, not only got approved by this committee, but it went through the House of Commons through concurrence, which your party concurred in. I'm going to read to you into the record, and I think it's important to get this in the record. And this is by probably the most knowledgeable person on citizenship and immigration matters in the Conservative caucus, that's Diana Blonsey. And this is what she said. The Conservative Party of Canada will absolutely oppose the revocation of citizenship by politicians behind closed doors, and will oppose citizenship being denied on any vague and unidentified grounds. We will uphold Canadian values of due process and certainty in law. The other thing she said, we are not going to strip someone's citizenship. It must be by the highest standard of due process, the highest burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The other quote, it's very clear that there is something very wrong with an act that purports to strip citizens of their citizenship behind closed doors by a few people who also have political consideration guiding their decisions. You know, this goes back to a debate in 2000 where we had the then critic, Mr. Leon Benoit Lakehead, critic for the Canadian Alliance, and what he said was, power should be left to the courts. A political connection should be taken out of revocation of citizenship. There are too many potential problems as a result of remaining in political hands. Now, this is just some of the quotes put forward. Last week, behind closed doors, you went against everything you said as the Alliance Party, as the Conservative Party, and you proceeded to strip citizenship on something that's totally archaic, judged by the courts to be anti-charter. I guess since you are the minister responsible, when you did your actions on the revocation, number one, did you read the ruling of the Federal Court of Appeal, which unanimously restored the citizenship of a person who now you took it away from? That's number one. And number two, did you ask for a report, as you were supposed to by the directive of that court, before you could do such a thing? Please answer the question.
Well, there were several questions raised there.
Two questions.
Well, first of all, what I'd like to do is congratulate the committee on the fine work it's done in terms of what needs to be done with the Citizenship Act and the changes to be made to it. Unfortunately, the three prior bills that were brought forward by the previous government all got dropped on the table. And so that's why we're making efforts now with Bill C-14, C-57, and the legislation that I'm proposing to table in the fall to address some of the problems that have been raised by this committee. And I hope that because of that, that we will have the support of the committee. In terms of revocation, there is a process that was followed with these individuals. The process was initiated under the previous government. It's taken many, many, many years. And because, quite frankly, as a country, regardless of political party, Canada has taken the position that we will not be a safe haven for war criminals. It's just that simple. And there is a legitimate process in place through the federal courts, and that is the process that we have begun.
Mr. Chairman, I asked two questions. Number one, did you read the directives of the Federal Court of Appeal? You did not answer that question. And did you also follow the direction of the Federal Court of Appeal? Or have you even read the Federal Court of Appeal decision that unanimously restored, unanimously, I might say, restored the citizenship?
The decision of the federal court is what's under appeal. And until it's under appeal, we're to carry on in normal fashion, except that we are to stay the removal of anyone who might otherwise qualify, depending on how that decision goes.
Mr. Chairman,
And we have followed
clueless.
those instructions of the court.
This witness is clueless of the Federal Court of Appeal decision that unanimously restored, and I dare say that I'm amazed that we could have a minister that's that clueless on an act where she can go and take away citizenship, contrary to 10 years of conservative position and alliance position.
Do you have a follow-up comment, Madam Minister, because we have about 20 seconds left in
If I might, there are two different...
time.
I think the honourable member is mixing two different issues. One is war criminals, in which case we're very clear we've been following the decisions of the federal court. The second issue, quite separately, is the Joe Taylor case, and that decision is being appealed as we speak, so therefore it shouldn't be implemented.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Talegdi, and thank you, Madam Minister. Ms. Fay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regard to lost Canadians, this is the issue that we're working on at the moment, and I have to say that I'm disappointed. What message is it that we're sending out to people that come to Canada when we give so little importance to the contribution made by people who are born here in Canada? What is the message we're sending out? We're sending out a message to people who are born here, who've paid taxes, who've served in the armed forces. Some of them are now pensioners living abroad. In the States, they've paid taxes. We've got the case of Mr. Waguer, who was here this morning. We're sending out a message to them. We're saying to them, you're immigrants in your own country. That's the option that's open to them. And I find that thoroughly disappointing and thoroughly unacceptable. I have a question for the Minister. Does the Minister think it's normal that a person born in Canada becomes an immigrant in their own country? Because that's basically the solution that's been put forward to many people in this situation. I would also like the Minister to give us their opinion on the citizenship issues that aren't resolved as yet. For example, what was the problem with the solution that had been put forward with regard to people who could have had a permanent residence card, and it would say that they were immigrants in their own country. So did the Minister find out what these people felt when they learnt that they weren't Canadian citizens? How did they react to this? The last time you appeared before the committee, you misled us with regard to the efforts that had been made in terms of communication. We got a letter from the department following your appearance, and we were told that the information that we'd been given was erroneous. Tell me then, the campaign that's underway at the moment, how much did it cost? Who were the contracts given to? Have the agreements with the different governments been made public? The agreements with the different governments and the different departments to make sure that services aren't interrupted? Because in the case of Mr. Wagner, service could well be interrupted. Tell me then, where are we with that particular issue? Have you contacted Revenue Canada or other departments? Have you tried to contact older people as well? Because we're talking here about measures that concern the elderly. And in many cases, these are people that are very attached to Canada. They have strong links to Canada. They served in the forces. They've paid taxes. And it's simply unacceptable for these people to find out that they're no longer Canadian citizens. I would also like you to give information, and if you can't give me all the answers, you can always send me a written answer. I'd also like you to tell me about, or give me an overview of the Taylor case. How many cases have been stayed while this decision is being analysed, and when can we expect the cases to be resolved?
questions as time permits. I would like to clarify one thing right up front, and that is the accusation that that anyone at this end of the table misled the committee deliberately last time. I would point out. I would point out.
Order.
I would point out that I had been in this position for a grand total of approximately 5 weeks at that point in time, and that the period during which the alleged advertisement was to have taken place also preceded the time that the current deputy minister was in the job. Now, it was an honest mistake, and I believe we've all at this table made at least one of those in our lifetime. And I would certainly ask for indulgence on that. As soon as we realized that there was an honest mistake made, we made sure that the committee was informed along with apologies. Now, to address the content issues here.
Excusez, Madame Finlay.
Apologies. I just want to clarify something. Just to clarify what it was you said, are you saying that you recognize that there hadn't been an effort deployed to try to contact people about the consequences of losing their citizenship? Is that what you just said there?
I said that there had been, but at the time it preceded either of our involvement at the department, and clarification was provided.
Donc le ministère n'a aucune trace des efforts qui ont été déployés.
The department's got no record of the efforts were undertaken at that time, particularly at that time.
Sorry, I can't recall a particular point in time. What I can tell you is we've taken action since then, including advertisements in newspapers, which you may or may not have seen yourselves, and we have examples here to make sure that the awareness is being raised now. And I have to say that, frankly, we were a bit surprised that despite all of the new media coverage that this issue has received, we didn't get a huge upsurge in the number of people coming forward with this problem. We were prepared for it. We put in special hotlines and such to deal with it. And where the number of people being dealt with was around 450 for a number of years, we've also reduced that to 285. Now, that shows that we're handling them faster, these issues faster than they come in. So that's the good news on that one. I'd also like to, if I can just find your questions here, point out there are approximately 250 cases that are being put on hold as per the federal court's instructions, and while the appeal is being heard in the Joe Taylor case. Some of your other questions. In terms of agreements with the provincial governments to ensure that benefits and such are in place and remain in place while these individuals' cases are being reviewed, the Deputy Minister has sent letters to his provincial counterparts, as has one of our ADMs, to provide detailed information and request their cooperation in these issues. And that's been working. We had a case just recently, in fact, where a woman was in danger of losing her benefits. While her case was reviewed, we were able to make arrangements. Her benefits were continued. And as it turned out, she was one of the many cases where she, in fact, had not lost her citizenship, but merely needed proof of her existing citizenship. So those things are working well. And, of course, we do work with other government departments in this issue as well. I'm trying to read my notes about your, in terms of the, I'm not sure that I understand your question about being an immigrant in your own country. The proposals that I'm making for legislation in the fall all date back to an, an effective date of January 147 for two reasons. One is that's the date that citizenship came into being in this country. Prior to that, we were British subjects, or for the purposes of immigration only, Canadian citizens, but without what we know to be citizenship. That's why we're celebrating the 60th anniversary of Canadian citizenship this year. The second reason for not backdating it prior to that period is that, well, as long as the Taylor case is before the courts, it would be terribly presumptuous of us, and perhaps even considered contempt, to supersede that with new legislation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Fye. Mr. Sixay.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for coming back to the committee. Minister, I want to come back to what you were just explaining about why 1947 was chosen as a cutoff date in your proposal for the new legislation, because it seems to me that a number of the most difficult cases and the most emotional of the cases that we've heard have been dealt with people who were born outside of Canada to a Canadian prior to 1947. And all of these, I think, have disturbed us all greatly to see those folks whose commitment to Canada I don't think is questioned by anyone go through the hardship and frustration of having their citizenship question fairly late in their lives, and with very significant consequences for them. Is there no remedy to solve the situation legislatively for those folks? I hear your answer that Canadian citizenship wasn't acknowledged officially until 1947, but there was a connection to Canada established before that, and we did operate under some rules before that. Why can't we go back farther than that and have a fix this fall for all of those folks as well?
Well, I'd certainly like to help those people if I possibly could. I think we've demonstrated that goodwill in all of the other cases and the priority that we've put on helping them. We really have put a lot of effort into this, and we're trying to prevent these cases going forward. That's why we're bringing forward the legislation. January 1, 47 is the date we actually Canadian citizenship came into existence. Now, the issue with the Taylor case is that that case is being appealed on for legal reasons. We believe that there were errors in law there. And the court itself has said that all of those decisions must be, anyone who would lose their, get a negative decision because of the existing rules had to have those decisions stayed. So we can say yes, but we can't say no. And in fairness, we have to stay them all until such time as the Taylor case has been decided. Anything else would be contrary to the order of the court, and it would also could also potentially be viewed as contempt of that court order.
So you don't have the option of introducing legislation that would deal with those folks until that court case is settled. Is that the department's position on that?
Yes.
All righty. It's very problematic, given that those are some of the most compelling, I think, of the cases that we have certainly heard here, and I know that we're going to be looking for a solution for those folks.
I agree.
Yeah, it's very problematic. Minister, you mentioned, I think just a few minutes ago, that there were 200 cases in abeyance because of the Taylor case? 250. Because I think when your officials were here last time, they said that there were 400. Is that number changed recently, or is it...
No. If I might explain that, the 400, and the numbers vary because they're static. Things change every day. We talked about 400 to 450 cases that had been identified to us. Since then, we've had another approximately 130 cases come forward because of the publicity, because people have been applying for passports and have discovered, looking for proof that they may or may not be citizens. When I last appeared, we had approximately 450 cases before us that we were trying to assess where they fit, whether they were in fact citizens or not, or in which category. Of those 450, we've added 130 to that. There are now about 285 in total that have not been resolved one way or another. 250 of the 285 have been stayed because of the Taylor case. So we're only dealing with about 35 right now, which we're addressing and saying, okay, what are the circumstances, what are the facts, and what, if anything, can we do to help them?
Okay. Minister, you mentioned one of the things that we've heard is the difficulty in getting information from the department for folks who find themselves in the situation of having their citizenship questioned. And we heard another one of those stories this morning of someone who, well, I think the service was probably shabby by anyone's standard, unfortunately. And I'm just wondering if there's any measure in place to do advocacy for people who come with those kinds of questions, and how that information's been, if there is, how that information's been put out through the department, so that when someone comes and is confronted with the crisis that their citizenship is in question, how is the department dealing with that, and how are people taking people through that process so that it recognizes the huge disruption in their lives that question causes?
Well, we do recognize that this can be a very very difficult, very emotional time for people, and that's why we've taken a number of steps. I'm sorry, I'm not aware of the story that you were told this morning. We do endeavor to help everyone we can as sympathetically as we can, and that's why we have special people in our call center, the hotline dedicated so that they understand, and we're not just dealing with sort of anyone who picks up the phone, but people who are dedicated to this so that they understand the sensitivities. We've also accelerated the timeline with which these individuals are to be dealt, and all of our people who are on this end of it trying to help have received training in being sympathetic and how to handle customer calls. If there are documented cases, I'd very much like to be aware of them so we can deal with them, because frankly that's not the way we like to do business. That's not acceptable. Well, not to me.
I'm sure, Minister, and I think if you look at the testimony for this morning from the Cochrane and Galbraith family, you'll find some problematic situation that they describe and merit your attention.
I'd be happy to look at that.
I wanted to ask one quick question about the question of revocation of citizenship, because it's something that the committee did a lot of work on in the last Parliament and made I believe a unanimous report on that matter. Very concerned about the evidentiary standard that was upheld in that process, or needed to be upheld in that process, given the seriousness of revoking someone's citizenship and taking that kind of measure against them. I wonder if the minister believes that if there's a problem with the war crimes legislation that exists in Canada that would merit going to I think a lesser or subsidiary process of revocation of citizenship to deal with serious issues of war crimes or suspected war criminals. Why are we not dealing with a war criminal under war crimes legislation or criminal code legislation? Why are we moving that to what I would call a lesser citizenship revocation process and dealing with folks in that manner? Doesn't this serious crime merit serious attention through a direct approach of the war crimes legislation?
Well, revocation is a very serious issue. It doesn't happen very often at all, but there are circumstances very clearly laid out where it's appropriate, and this has been done in accordance with the law that's been in existence since the 1980s. I believe it was the 80s that was brought in, a policy, and it's been consistent. It's been before the courts. The courts have upheld it. In fact, the federal court is very much part of the process in determining whether there's sufficient evidence of an individual's complicity in that process. And I would point out also that the final decision does lie within the Governor and Council. That process is a very onerous one, actually, and everything was conducted, all of the exercise in accordance with the law as it exists now. I think the fact that there were cases where the Governor and Council declined revocation speaks to the fairness of the system.
Yeah, and I think the committee really does want the government to look very closely at our reports from the last time, because we were concerned about the evidentiary provisions, balance of probabilities, a lower standard versus beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the higher criminal standard for which we thought was appropriate for revocation, given the seriousness of that act and given how important citizenship is to people in Canada. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Minister.
Do you have a comment on Mr. Sixay's comment there, Madam Minister, before I move on?
Just very briefly, appreciate the concerns. Those are beyond the scope of my department, and I'd be happy to pass them along.
Thank you. Mr. Kamarnicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister. Certainly, it's refreshing to see the approach you've taken on this issue, particularly when the legislation dates back to, of course, 47 and 67, and a lot of anomalies that have been created and hardships that flowed from that. And certainly they've been in existence for a number of years, and the steps to address the immediate concerns in allocating resources to do that, and then to come forward with some constructive proposals for legislative change, I think is refreshing in this instance. I know that you've asked this committee to study the issue and come up with some particular proposals in terms of how to address them. I know we've heard from a number of witnesses I think Mr. Chapman maybe 4 or 5 times, and perhaps more than that. He's certainly identified many of the particular areas that needed attention, and there's no question of that. And I think certainly our responsibility would be to give that type of recommendation or advice to you. But as you well know, the committee's been sitting for a long time, and a number of extra meetings, a number of witnesses called, some more than once, to reiterate the situation without actually coming forward with a report, and no report in sight. I think we're venturing now into the issue of undocumented workers, and still you haven't received recommendation from this report. And I know this morning I've indicated that there's certainly a lot of politics being played with this issue, which is an emotional one, and one that certainly is near and dear to many hearts. And it seems to be going on and on, as opposed to constructively attempting to sit down, work together to get this done. In fact, and I think the conduct we saw in one case where there was a fairly aggressive approach taken on junior officials, which I would call perhaps shameful and regrettable, and certainly the responsibility for them is to apply the legislation and the regulation as it might be. And it would be our jobs as parliamentarians to give them something to work with. And certainly I can say that some of the members, and Mr. Chapman in particular, have taken a lot of steps to try and move this along, and certainly had some partial legislation, but we're looking for something far more constructive, and something that would apply on a broad basis that would address much of the situations. And I see you've picked 1947 as a date, and that's the date of the Citizenship Act, and also reserved onto yourself the Section 5.4 remedy, which would allow you to deal with specific cases. And I take it from what you're saying, you're prepared to look at those cases in advance when we've had an opportunity to do so. And so, again, having heard some of the submissions from Mr. Chapman, in particular also from the Mennonite community about children that were sort of deemed out of wedlock simply because the marriage was not recognized civilly, how do you see this legislation addressing the concerns at least raised by those groups, as well as the other specific groups that came before this committee?
Well, thank you very much for the question. You know, I agree wholeheartedly with you that this is a very emotional issue. It's also a very troubling one. I know there are a few things that I value as much as my Canadian citizenship. To me, it's a great privilege to be Canadian, and it's certainly not something I would ever want to lose or have in jeopardy. And that's why we've taken such strong, clear action to help these individuals where there is doubt. Whether it's the border babies or the war brides or people who have failed to retain their citizenship. But I think that with the privilege of Canadian citizenship comes responsibilities as well. I believe that if one is far enough removed that one doesn't have an attachment to Canada, or one doesn't have any meaningful relationship with Canada, then I'm not sure that, let's say someone is third generation, 2 generations, they and their parents, neither of which has ever set foot in this country or had any contribution to the country. I'm not sure that by the 3rd generation they have any real interest, other than perhaps this convenience in being Canadian. And that's why we're limiting it to the first generation, proposing to limit it to the first generation born abroad. Otherwise, we would be devaluing the Canadian citizenship. The proposals that I'm looking to put into legislation for the fall do not, by the way, preclude any input from this committee. I would welcome that if the report can be presented and there's unanimous agreement on it prior to the tabling of the legislation. I'm always willing to make it better if that's possible. But in the absence of such a report, I felt that it was important that we act, that we take action to correct as many as possible of these situations as readily as possible and as soon as possible. That way we can avoid the problem for people in the future, and that's why we're doing this. It will not help everybody, no question about that, but it certainly will help the vast majority of the cases with which we've had to deal, and certainly I believe most of the witnesses that have appeared before this committee on this issue.
Further time?
and 15 seconds.
It seems that some of the witnesses I've heard from over the course of time have found there's a myriad of different types of applications and forms and perhaps conflicting information. They've gone through a myriad of things to try and resolve their problems, and we're really looking for us for some simplicity on a go-forward basis. And of course, many have tried to understand which category they fit in, and it would seem that by what I hear from you, Mr. Minister, that, Madam Minister, is that the application, you're actually going to, through the legislation, you're hoping to confer citizenship without going through a lot of applications and paperwork. Is that, I'm wondering if that's correct? And in addition to that, having sort of taken the 1947 going forward, those that have not renewed their citizenship, forgotten to take certain administrative steps, would they fall into this sort of go-forward basis? Is that clear, all of those that may have lost their citizenship through one anomaly or another?
Through certain anomalies, yes. For example, anyone after February of 1977 who might have lost their citizenship through failure to retain it through that provision, then they could have it restored. And I'd like to stress again, no one no one who is currently a Canadian citizen will lose it. So there would be a transition provision, for example, for those second generations born outside of Canada right now. They would not lose their citizenship. Now, let's recognize, too, that in the process, we are making it as simple as possible. We're trying to make it simple to understand and simple to implement, but we would still need proof that these individuals were eligible to be Canadian citizens. We're not just going to accept them in because they say, "Hi, I'm Canadian," or that sort of thing. We do need proof. We're duty bound to insist that they provide that kind of proof. But our objective is to make this simple, transparent, consistent, and sustainable.
Thank you. That concludes our 7-minute round. We will now go to our 5-minute rounds. Mr. Karagianis.
Minister, you said citizenship is a privilege and comes with responsibilities. I put to you that being a minister also has privileges, and it comes with responsibilities to know the file. When you were here last time, I questioned you. If you've advertised, you turned to your deputy, and then the deputy turned around and spoke to somebody else from the department, and you insisted that you had advertised. So this is not an excuse of like I was new 10 days. Your deputy turned around and consulted with other people that you had from the department. So you also stated that in the absence of a report, you're bringing this forward. Minister, we're working on a report, and unfortunately you're bringing this forward because you want to please the media that is here today, because you don't want to come here today and face the music on the mistakes that you've made. This is what you're doing. Minister, you also state in the recommendations, fourth, anyone born to Canadian children abroad, mother or father, in or out of wedlock, on or after January 1st, 1947 is a Canadian citizen, and they will have their citizens confirmed if they're first generation born abroad, but no farther. Does that mean, Minister, that somebody born abroad, a second generation, is not going to be a Canadian? Is this what you're stating?
We're saying that going forward, that there will be no, the existing provision for second generation born abroad, being a citizen until age 28 or having the option to retain the citizenship by age 28, we would discontinue that. There will, however, I'm proposing, be a provision to allow anyone who's currently in the system to go through that process.
Minister, let me give you an example. A child is born abroad. Child is 25, 26. Child lives in Canada, gets married, they go work abroad, and they have a child. Does that new child, born from now on, that's born to a parent, was already born outside Canada, will that child be a Canadian citizen, yes or no?
Now, is the parent, the new parent, first generation or second generation?
First generation born abroad.
Then the second generation would not automatically be granted citizenship unless they were born in Canada.
Well, Minister, let me show you a picture that I'm holding in my hands. These are my 5 daughters. One of them was born abroad. It took your officials 5 months to confirm if she was a citizen or not. What you're telling me, if my daughter goes works abroad, and she has a child, that child cannot be a Canadian citizen. That's what you're telling me. You're going back to your reform roots of picking and choosing, Minister. This is what your statement says, Minister, that if my grandchild is born abroad, my grandchild cannot be a Canadian citizen. How dare you? How dare you tell my daughter that was born abroad that her children cannot be Canadian citizens when this child has been in this country since she was 2 months old? How dare you, Minister? How dare you say this and then go at home tonight, face the mirror, and say, I'm okay, I got no problem. Minister, you come with privileges and responsibilities, and unfortunately your responsibility to Canadians is failing. When are you going to hand in your resignation, Minister? Do it, and do it now.
Well, if I might comment that going back to your original statement, you as a committee have been asking that action be taken on this. We've waited on action for this for many, many years. This is not a new problem.
Minister,
These anomalies have
I'm going to go back
for
to my
many
grandchild.
years.
Minister, I'm going to go back to my grandchild. This is what you're stating in this report.
Order. Mr. Karagiannis. When I bang the gavel, I want to bring the committee to order. The Minister was in the middle of an answer. I believe she was 10 seconds into it. I have to allow the Minister some time to answer your questions. So, Minister, please answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The anomalies, citizenship anomalies, have existed for many, many, many years. And this committee and its preceding committees have tried to deal with it. Preceding governments have failed to deal with it. We're proposing to take action. I have asked for recommendations from the committee. So far, I haven't received any. That's not a comment in any direction. It's merely a statement of fact that I don't think the committee could deny. I'd like to see action taken. These are the proposals I'm making. I have said already that I am open to suggestions for improvements. I'm quite open to suggestions for improvements, and if they're forthcoming, I'd be in time for the legislation, I'd be happy to consider them.
Minister, what you're doing is what your predecessor did. After Lebanon, you started saying that we're going to look at dual citizenship, and you are providing your reform base, your hardcore reform base, a means of applauding for you. Because according to you, you can only be a citizen of one country, and individuals that are citizens of two countries are not welcomed.
This is not, has nothing
Minister,
to do
this
with
is what
dual
you said as an
citizenship.
example.
Nothing whatsoever.
Cut it off there. A brief response from the Minister. We're gone over by about 45 seconds. A brief response from the Minister.
Thank you. This issue has nothing to do with dual citizenship whatsoever. We are not legislating for or against it. We're not saying people can or cannot have it. All we're talking about is looking at what it takes to have and to acquire Canadian citizenship.
Pending your resignation.
Order, please. Ms. Grable.
And thank you for appearing, Madam Minister. Throughout the committee study on this topic, we have heard many different types of cases before us. Border babies and war brides and their children, people who lost their citizenship because their parents renounced it, then Mennonites, children of Canadian forces, members, to name it a few. So could you please inform this committee how your proposals will affect some of these groups?
Sorry, I missed part of the question there.
Could you please inform this committee that how your proposals will affect some of these groups?
Just list the groups again. Okay, well, for example, there are some individuals referred to as border babies who were born for accidentally, either perhaps they had their documents stamped as Canadian citizens when they came back to Canada, and they would be covered by this. There are individuals who may have been inadvertently considered not Canadian even though they were born here. Pardon me? Those who went to the U.S. For example, those who went to the U.S. Prior to 77 took out American citizenship, were forced to relinquish their Canadian citizenship. In the process, they could reclaim it. So there are a number of different ways that individuals could be helped in this way. We're also looking to, remember, in this process, it's still continuing the special circumstances and reviews under Section 5.4. So because we are very aware that each of these cases is different, to lump them all as groups is really unfair to each and every one of them, because I know all the cases that I've looked at, every single one is a separate and unique set of circumstances.
Okay. That's all.
More time left. And, pardon me?
Mr. Chair, I'll share my time with Mr. Batters.
How much time do I have, Mr. Chair?
You have approximately 3 minutes.
I'll still get a full allotment of time for when my slot comes around? Correct?
Yes.
Thanks. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank the Minister and her officials very much for appearing here before us. I know, Minister, we've spoken about this, I've spoken to you personally about this issue. I know that you care about it a great deal, and you care about rectifying this issue, this important issue of lost Canadians. I have to say that you know, the performance we witnessed earlier by Mr. Karagiannis opposite was perhaps worthy of an Oscar nomination, and I wonder if he gave the same level of performances in private to previous ministers Volpe and Scrow. As you've alluded to, Minister, these are problems that have gone on year after for multiple years and have not been addressed, and yet you're stepping forward, showing real leadership, and addressing some of these important cases in the legislation that you're proposing in the fall. I'm going to limit this pretty much to a comment because I have a question that I'd like to ask you in my allotted time. But I know that you care deeply about the cases. Some of these people that we heard from this morning, some that are sitting here in this committee today, of lost Canadians, and that you and your department are doing everything possible within your power to solve these situations, yet respecting that there is a case before the courts, that you're not able to act in that set of circumstances because it is before the courts, but that you care deeply about these cases and you want to get them rectified. Maybe just a quick comment on that, and I'll ask you further questions in my next round.
Well, I thank you, and I'm sure the department thanks you for recognizing the efforts that the department has made and our government has made, indeed, to help as many people determine their status, their citizenship status, and resolve it as quickly as possible and as fairly as possible. It really has been a very significant effort, and you know, I want to make sure that it A, gets even better, B, that through this proposed legislation we're able to prevent that kind of experience from happening to other people in the future.
Thank you. Is that my time, Mr. Chair?
You do have 30 seconds, or 40 seconds.
I think I'll yield my 30 seconds. I'll just continue the next round, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, we only have about 2 minutes left, so I guess we could wrap up this section of our committee hearing and go on now to the main estimates. Do you have any closing comment, Madam Minister, you want to make with regard to this part of our committee hearing on lost citizenship? Do you have any comment you want to make in closing?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to say that this is a very complex issue. The way that the 1947, 1977 Citizenship Acts were written has led to a great deal of confusion by an awful lot of people. And it's also unfortunate in that because it's so complex, there are situations where people get confused. And it can be very scary for them. We're trying to simplify that, Mr. Chair, and do it as quickly as possible, as fairly as possible, while upholding the dignity and the value of Canadian citizenship.
Thank you. Okay, we will now get into consideration of the main estimates, and we'll go to Mr. Algebra.
First, I do want to comment on something you said earlier, is that this committee had never submitted any recommendations to you on the issue of lost Canadians. And it's really disappointing, and that's really what feeds a lot of the cynicism.
We have some order, please.
That's really what feeds a lot of the cynicism and the frustration on behalf of this committee, because we've met frequently, including one meeting I recall for about 2 hours with the parliamentary secretary. The critics from all parties here submitted recommendations in writing to the parliamentary secretary. He promised to get back to us with legal opinions from the department on those recommendations. So I needed to correct that record by you stating that the committee had never submitted anything. The fact of the matter is that we did, and it's due to the work of this committee by keeping this issue in public domain that you are now planning to do something. I'm hopeful. I'm looking forward to seeing those recommendations, but I was hoping that that legislation would have been submitted before the frivolous legislation about so-called exotic dancers' work conditions. Now my question is to you. I have with me here the platform from 2005-2006 by the Conservative Party. And under the immigration section, it says, a Conservative government will create a Canadian agency for assessment and recognition of credentials to provide pre-assessment of international credentials and experience. We will work with the provinces and professional associations to ensure foreign trained professionals meet Canadian standards while getting properly trained professionals working in Canada quickly. Now I have here 2006 budget, and in it, it says the government will work towards the establishment of a Canadian agency for the assessment and recognition of foreign credentials. The question is, what is the status of this assessment and recognition of foreign credential agency?
Well, thank you for the questions. I have to admit, first off, that I am surprised that our introduction of Bill C-57, which is aimed at protecting people from would-be people who are coming to Canada, which is aimed at protecting from being exploited or subject to human trafficking, would be so easily dismissed by you. But frankly, I think it's very important legislation. Sure. And I don't see, I'm not going to apologize for having brought it forward, not in the least. I think it's far too important to be dismissed that lightly. In terms of the foreign credentials review, we did, as we promised, undertake extensive consultations. Myself, while I was both in this ministry and my previous one, my predecessor in this department, our officials in both departments, as well as our political staff, undertook extensive consultations with a very wide range of stakeholders right across the country. We've consulted all the provinces and territories, post-secondary institutions, regulatory bodies, settlement agencies, immigration groups, very exhaustive consultations. And what they told us was that having a federal agency would actually be inappropriate.
So is this another broken promise, Minister?
This is responding to the needs of Canadians, responding to the consultations and being willing to work with people to develop a process that will actually help new Canadians, people who are considering coming here. You see, I've been told too many times by too many people how they waited to come to Canada for 3 or 4 years. They got here. Then it could take them as long as 2 years to find out even where to get their credentials evaluated. Once they did so, they discovered that there was a gap between their credentials and what was required to practice in Canada. And so then it took them maybe 2 years to go back to school. Many of them couldn't afford it by that point. Our Federal Foreign Credentials Referrals Office that we announced last week is going to help these people very quickly identify where and how to get their credentials assessed even before they get to Canada so that they can close the gap on their skills and by the time they get here and get them to work in their chosen trades.
Minister, sorry, because I have limited time, I want to focus on the question. And at the time of the campaign, I remember very clearly how Conservative candidates were exploiting the frustration of Canadians like the ones you're expressing, and by making a promise, a pledge, that the Conservative government would create a pre-assessment foreign credential agency. So I need a clear answer from you. Is this another policy that was promised without any thought put into it, and now that you're in government, are breaking that promise because you recognize that it's unfulfillable?
Well, this is responding to the needs of Canadians. Is there something about that with which you have a problem?
No, I'm asking about the promise. Did you not make a promise to create an assessment agency?
I think what's important here is the action that we're taking to help new Canadians.
Minister, I hope you answer my question. Did you not promise to create an assessment agency?
Those were the terms that we put forward, and what we've done
what is the status
is provide something that will actually be workable.
What is the status of that assessment agency?
I'm sorry, I couldn't
What is
hear.
the status of the Foreign Credential Assessment Agency?
It will be.
Has it been created?
It would be totally inappropriate to create that now, and given that what we have, and based on our consultations that we've done. That would not serve the needs of Canadians. It would be treading on provincial toes, and we have to respect provincial jurisdiction. We are working in conjunction with the provinces and the territories and a wide range of stakeholders, because even the regulatory bodies, most of the over 400, operate within provincial jurisdiction, and we've been very successful in working them. I'm really excited about the new FCRO and what it's offering, and I've had some terrifically positive feedback from
I'm pleased that you're excited, but I can convey to you that a lot of the frustration that many Canadian agencies, communities, with the last announcement that you made, because it reminded them of the income trust promise, where at the time during the campaign you made an explicit promise, and afterwards you said, oh, sorry, we didn't think it through, and now we have to break our promise. This is another policy that was misguided, and at the time many people said that you couldn't do that, but you made a promise to exploit the frustration, attract vote, and get political expediency. So, Minister, will you apologize for that promise and for not fulfilling that promise to many Canadians who are watching you today and still waiting for that promise to be fulfilled?
Well, if we had kept that promise, then we would not have been able to deliver what we did deliver last week, something, a Foreign Credentials Referrals Office that will be able to be used right around the world, one that many groups have responded to and are welcoming. This is something that the Liberal government promised to do for years and years and years, and didn't. They delivered nothing in this regard. We now have a working in Canada search engine that will help would-be Canadians anywhere in the world assess get their credentials assessed before they even come here, so that they can get the skills upgrades they need while they're still in their home country before they come here, and thereby get to work in their chosen field, in their field of training, much, much earlier in the process. I'm not going to apologize for allowing them and helping them to do that.
Breaking a promise and duplicating work that already exists.
Time is up. I'm sorry. I know the member wants to pursue it, but I have to move on to Mr. LeMay. Mr. LeMay.
Eh bien.
Good afternoon, Minister. How are you doing this afternoon? I'm used to Indian affairs, justice, and I'll try to go gently here. I was surprised by the first part, Madam Minister, and I'd like to come back, with your indulgence, to the first section that we were discussing. You said that you organised a public awareness campaign, that you tried to reach out to as many people as possible, and that you had a 1-800 number available. The problem is that there are people who live in the United States. Is this 1-800 number available to people living in the States? Was the advertising, the public awareness campaign run in the States? Because as you know, there's the border, and lots of people have gone over to the other side of that border and are in the States. So did that public awareness campaign reach them? And if it did, is there a 1-800 number for the States and also for other countries in the world? Secondly, I'm delighted to have you here with us, Madam Minister. Once an immigrant comes to Canada, I could give you an example. We could take the example of doctors, people who come and settle in the regions. But we could also think of bakers and butchers and grocers who are in Abitibi, in my region. And they have to, for security reasons, go and meet with somebody from the Immigration Department in Ottawa, in Hull, or in Montreal. But we have doctors in the faraway areas, in the outlying areas, who are immigrants. And what they have to do then is close their doctor's office. They can't go and work in the hospital. They can't be on call while they come to Ottawa or wherever else they have to go. And this also concerns psychiatrists and nurses and so forth. So they have to shut down business while they come to Ottawa. Tell me then, would it not be possible for someone from your office to go to the regions? They could go perhaps once a month and they could do all the security checks there. There are people professors at the University of Quebec in Abitibi-Témiscamingue, and they've got to come to Ottawa and they lose 3 days. 3 days for a 5-minute interview. A 5-minute interview just to check out that it is the actual person in question. They're my 2 questions, and I hope you'll have enough time to answer me. I don't think I was too tough on you, was I? Thank you very much. As for the information campaign and the public awareness campaign, we ran it primarily in Canada because the majority of people who are looking for this information are here in Canada.
International helpline, if you like. We simply don't have the resources. That being said, in the United States, recognizing your very valid point that there are a number of people who have moved there and may have lost their citizenship, maybe part of the border baby class, we have made sure that our consulates and embassies in the United States are aware of this situation. Anyone who chooses to contact them, and they're scattered around the United States, can help them or can direct them to the CIC website. And where there is information, how people can contact us, there's also information on the website to help them. We've tried to make it as easy as possible for these individuals. That being said, even if we were to advertise in every newspaper in the United States, if it weren't cost prohibitive, the challenge there is that would the right people be reading the right page in the right newspaper? We are deploying all of the resources that we can, quite reasonably, to identify these people and certainly to help them.
Et ma deuxième?
A second question. I'm going to ask the Deputy Minister to answer this. You brought to our attention a real problem. Over the course of the past decade, several offices in the regions have been shut down for economic reasons. In order to try and reduce the impact of this, we're considering a couple of different possibilities. One, could we use Service Canada offices, because they have more offices around the country than do Immigration Canada. Secondly, sometimes for citizenship purposes, our officers go out into the regions, and perhaps we could try and do that more regularly. And thirdly, and this isn't a promise, but we are looking at the possibility of doing it via technology, because we have to make sure that we do these security checks so that documents go to the right person. But you're absolutely right to draw this problem to our attention. And question. Well, I like the first 2 suggestions best because I understand what you're saying about security. I've got no problem with that. I could even lend you my own office if you want to, because in the regions it's something that's very important for us. I want to draw your attention to this. We have lost 44 landed immigrants who've said, no, I'm going to go to the centre of the country because I'm losing all this time. You spoke about information. I'm going back to the first section of today's meeting again. I'll only be brief. We're talking here about people who are 60 and over, people born before 1947. These people are 60 or more, older, and a lot of people who are 60 and over aren't really that familiar with computers and IT. And that's why I'm trying to draw attention to this. Is there something going on in the embassies in other countries to try and explain to these people you could lose your citizenship, because they could lose it, and that's what's worrying me? Answer. Thus far, we have focused on people who have spent most of their life in Canada and who have very close links with Canada, people who are still here, who are living here. These people are our priority. They are the ones we're trying to identify. Thank you.
Minister, on the question of the estimates and the various issues related to that, one of the issues that's been of great concern to the committee has been the crisis at the IRB. we're very concerned that around one-third of the positions at the IRB have been unfilled, that the backlog of cases facing the IRB is increasing at about 1,000 cases a month after some valiant efforts were made to reduce a huge backlog that existed in previous years at the IRB, and that was finally seeming to be to come under some control. Now it seems to have increased from about 19,000 up to 25,000 and is going up by about 1,000 cases a month. I notice in the estimates that the money for the IRB is actually, there's a decrease of I think $4 million, and I'm wondering if that savings is coming from the fact that there are so many vacancies and therefore paychecks aren't going out, and what the intention of what your intention and the department's intention is to solve this crisis, which is affecting so many people directly. People who have come to Canada because their lives are in danger, or Canadians who have had problems sponsoring a relative or a family member and who have taken that to an appeal. What's the plan, Minister, to solve this very, very serious crisis?
Well, you're right. It is a very serious situation. We want to deal with the refugees as quickly as possible. That's only fair to them, for starters. And that's what we are working to increase the number of sitting members. It is a long process. We want to make sure that we've got the right individuals in these positions, because it's a very challenging job, no question about it. It takes someone with special skills to be able to evaluate the situation, determine the legitimacy of the claim. As you're aware, ours is a refugee system that is much sought after, shall we say. And unfortunately, there are people who come here, apply for refugee status just so they can, quote unquote, get 5 years in Canada here. And then deal with the reality. And so we have to make sure and these people recognize that they are not legitimate refugees, but it's worth a shot in their minds. And we need to have people who can identify these people along the way to make sure that the system doesn't get abused. Not everybody wants to do that job, quite frankly, but we have undertaken a fairly extensive search for new candidates. We have we've raised the standards of these individuals so that if they write the test, which they are required to do, they must actually pass it. And that weeds out quite a few people. We are proceeding with filling those positions just as quickly as we possibly can. We're busy cutting the other backlogs, so we don't want to see this one grow. That's not the way we manage things. And in terms of the cuts, that's unrelated. Some $4.5 million of the decline is due to temporary funding that has sunsetted.
Okay. Minister, does your criticism of the inability of people to make the right determinations, is that why people are not being reappointed to the IRB? I mean, the former chair says that the IRB is in danger of losing 300 years of experience in terms of people who know how to adjudicate a refugee claim and have been doing so for many years. Since they're not being reappointed, that experience is being lost. I hear you saying that you need the right people to make those claims. Mm-hmm. Is it your belief that those folks who are not being reappointed were incompetent, and that's why they're not being reappointed?
No, there are some individuals who will be reappointed. There are others who choose not to be reappointed.
No, but the people who aren't being reappointed, who were ready to be reappointed, are you saying that they were somehow incompetent and failed a review of their
I'm not going to make any blanket statements about them because, again, each case is unique. What I am saying is we want to make sure that we have the right people there, and so where there are opportunities to fill those positions with appropriate people, we're going to do that as quickly as possible.
Okay. Minister, one of the programs that was recently announced was a program to encourage permanent residence applications from foreign students studying in Canada and temporary foreign workers. Mm-hmm. I believe that it was suggested that up to 25,000 applications would be received a year, and that group of applications would come from the targets already announced. Am I correct in assuming then, Minister, that means that the overall number of places available in all the other categories is thereby reduced by 25,000, so that, say, I think the high end for the target for this coming year was going to be 265,000, so that would mean that the high end was really 240,000 for people who are coming as economic immigrants, people who have made family reunification applications, and refugees and people needing protection. Does that mean that there are actually 25,000 fewer places now because of this new announcement available to those kinds of applications? applications or those kinds of applicants?
Well, there's still the same number available in total. It's just the different streams through which they can apply are different. Industry has told us, in fact, industry has been screaming at us to help them get new people in, temporary foreign workers. They need people with Canadian experience. They need people who are used to Canada. And one of the ways, one of the several tools that we've put in place is to have, make it possible for students who are now allowed to work off campus for up to 20 hours a week, have them be capable of applying from within the country. That's the fastest means for employers to get Canadian experience, new talent, and people who are willing to stay here. A project that I worked on a number of years ago indicated that most students prefer to stay where they graduate. And so if we can attract foreign students here while they're learning the technology, being accredited to Canadian standards, potentially getting Canadian work experience, I think it behooves us to try to build on that experience and build on those attachments that they're creating to Canada to help out industry.
Minister, what do you say to families, though, that have been waiting with a huge backlog of family class applications, who now it appears there are fewer possibilities of processing those applications in the backlog because there's essentially this new class of applicants who are being given priority? There's also a lot of people there who are extremely frustrated with the situation, that their family members haven't been able to join them in Canada. We know that that's been a very successful aspect of family reunification, a successful aspect of our immigration program. So what do you say to those folks who see the potential spots being directed into another stream and away from the family reunification stream, essentially?
Well, I do sympathize with their frustration, and I'd like to be able to get them here faster. But that's why we review each year, and the levels plan, as you pointed out, it's 265,000 is much higher than it was in the past, and that's why we review that number every year and raise it appropriately, so that there are new slots being created so that we don't disadvantage others.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sixay. Thank you, Madam Minister. Mr. Batters.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. 7 or 5, Mr. Chair? 7-minute round. Excellent. Well, if I have a few extra minutes, then I want to go back because I thought we'd have another round in the issue of lost Canadians. I'll spend my first 2 minutes dealing with that subject, Minister. As I alluded to before, we've discussed how important this issue is to the government and to yourself. It's an issue that really tugs on one's heartstrings. We heard some very emotional stories this morning. These are individuals that have thought that they were Canadians and have lived in this country their entire life in many cases, only to find out that they are not Canadian citizens. So I know it's an issue that when you took over this portfolio, you took a number of significant steps to deal with this issue. And I wonder if you could just elaborate. It's not just a matter of having a 1-800 number. I know that there are when there's a question of loss of citizenship, there's a program officer that's being assigned to each case. I wonder if you could just give the committee a few examples of some of the concrete steps that you've taken to address this very serious issue of lost Canadians.
Well, the issue of lost Canadians is a very important one. Some people dismiss it because, they say that it doesn't affect many, but those it does affect are profoundly affected. Yeah. And so that's why when I came into this position, we took action very quickly to set up the hotline. We have people who are dedicated at the call center to helping these. We've set up special procedures to expedite how the case is assessed, how their status is determined. You're right, we've got special caseworkers assigned to each case. We've notified the individuals who've been affected by the Taylor decision, the ones that have been put on hold. We've made sure we contacted them so that they weren't left hanging out there in limbo. They would at least know why their situation wasn't being dealt with. Excellent. We've addressed the provinces and territories, asked them to work with us to ensure that social benefits are not disrupted while these cases are under review. We've made special arrangements for individuals who are in this situation while their status is being determined. We've made special arrangements if they've needed to go out of the country on an emergency trip of some form or another. We've worked with our friends at Border Services and Foreign Affairs on these various issues, and that hasn't stopped.
Good.
All right, there's special information on our website, as well as again, we are now running paid advertisements, and I have samples I can pass around. And these are actual these are current newspapers where we're trying to reach out to people and say, if you're aware, if you're in these circumstances, contact us because we want to help.
Absolutely.
And I have I've stood up in the House of Commons numerous times and encouraged MPs that if they are aware of cases or potential cases, to bring them forward to my office, and we'd be more than happy to deal with them on an expedited basis. So we started right away. And I think part of the measure of the success of our initiatives is the fact that for years the active files number, if you like, was around 450.
Okay.
Now we've got that down to 285, 250 which are attributable to the Joe Taylor case.
Thank you, Minister. I appreciate your extensive answer there. I want to turn to the issue raised by Mr. Algabra regarding foreign credentials, which is an important issue as well. And congratulations on the announcement of the Foreign Credential Referrals Office. And the end of this, I've dug up a little bit of homework here on this issue because I think it's important, particularly for the Liberal members opposite, to hear a little bit of the history of this issue. At the end of this comment, I'm going to ask you basically how you were able to get the job done. As you're aware, this is an important issue to Canadians, especially to immigrant families who have settled in this country. This issue, though, has been a pressing topic for some time, and the previous Liberal government had been promising to deal with it for years. In 2002, before my tenure in the House of Commons, Mr. Chair, over 5 years ago, the then Liberal Minister of State, Jean Augustine, said, and I quote, "The recognition of foreign credentials is a government priority." However, in 5 years, the Liberals didn't get it done. In the speech from the throne that same year, the Liberals promised, and I quote, "The government will work with its partners to break down the barriers to the recognition of foreign credentials and will fast-track skilled workers entering Canada with jobs already waiting for them." And again, of course, Mr. Chair, the Liberals didn't get it done. It's interesting to note, Mr. Chair and Ministers, that Liberals made yet another unfulfilled promise in their 2004 speech from the throne. And let me read from this document. I quote, this is 2004, "The government will do its part to ensure speedier recognition of foreign credentials and prior work experience. It will also implement measures to inform prospective immigrants and encourage the acquisition of necessary credentials before they arrive in Canada." And of course, they didn't get it done then either. So amazingly, Minister, the previous Liberal government even admitted their own failures on the recognition of foreign credentials in the speech from the throne to open the 38th Parliament. That's when I joined this illustrious House. 38th Parliament, they said, and I quote, "Efforts to improve the recognition of foreign credentials and prior work experience have yielded too little progress. Looking to the growing contribution that will be required from new Canadians as our population ages, this government, the then Liberal government, will redouble its efforts in cooperation with the provinces and professional bodies to help integrate them into the workforce." Close quote. Though the Liberal government admitted their failure and promised to redouble their efforts, they still didn't get it done. So as I promised, Minister, please can you tell us, with all this Liberal inaction I've given a history from 2002 forward, how were you able to make some progress on this very, very important issue and get things done for Canadians?
Well, I thank you very much for the question. We did say that we want to help newcomers to Canada get to work in their chosen fields, the jobs they were trained to do. We don't want to see the qualified doctors driving taxi cabs, not when we have such a shortage of doctors. And it's not just doctors, it's medical technicians, it's welders, it's a wide range of skilled and unskilled labor, right, frankly. unregulated labor, people in the tourism industry, for example. We need to be putting those skills and talents to use. But for years now, there has been no coordinated effort. The horror stories that I've heard firsthand from newcomers to Canada, that it took them up to 6 years to find out where to get their credentials assessed. I mean, that's ridiculous. So we took action, this is phase one, to help them get to that situation, get their credentials assessed even before they get here. You know, a lot of Canadian universities and colleges have partnerships or satellites right around the world. So for many people who find, you know, they want to come to Canada, they can now, through the FCRO, get their credentials assessed by the appropriate body. They can then, while they're still waiting to come to Canada, work on getting their skills upgraded through recognized institutions whose courses and credits will be recognized here in Canada. They can also work on their English language skills before they get here. So instead of waiting for 2 to 5 years after they get here to get to work in their field, and while their families are dependent upon them, they can shorten that process up very, very significantly.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. That completes our 7-minute rounds. Now we'll go to 5-minute rounds. Mr. Dhaliwal.
Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, and your associates coming out here. In fact, I'd like to set the record straight first. As a Conservative member was saying, Liberals have done nothing. In fact, in 2005, Liberals committed $263 million for the International Trained Workers Initiative. $68 million foreign credentials, $75 million foreign trained nurses and doctors, $20 million language training, $100 million going to Canada portal. In fact, Minister, in the last 2 years, I have the opportunity to go to the businesses. This foreign trained workers is not, that issue is not an issue of immigrants. It is becoming an issue of our businesses across Canada. And your department and your party long ago knew that a centralized agency was unworkable. You have seen many witnesses coming to this committee and telling the committee members again and again and again that such an agency will not work in this situation. Can you honestly tell me that your party did not know that this agency will not work?
Now, I certainly couldn't speak on behalf of any other individuals. I can tell you myself that I made, along with my colleague, who is now the Minister of HRSD, we consulted with people, we listened to them, we took action on this, and I will agree with you on one thing, that this isn't just a problem of immigrants, it's a problem of business, and it's a problem for those who are already here in this country, whether they're Canadians or whether they're newcomers, is getting credentials recognized across this country. People don't know how to do it, and this is a tool, the FCRO, particularly the Working in Canada tool, is going to help an awful lot of people, and it's going to enhance our mobility. Now, we've got to go to the next steps, no question, but I think this is a really good phase one. It's going to materially help a lot of people, and I think that's worthwhile.
And Minister, to follow up, the office that you are, the new office that you are bringing in fact, that's going to do the same job, referring those individuals to the provincial jurisdiction. Those are the ones that assess the credentials and recognize the degrees. In fact, this problem is still going to be ongoing for a long, long, long time. And I don't think this is a practical solution, because I went through this. I know Mr. Elgabra went through this, and many other Canadians that went through these problems.
Well, I'm not sure quite what the question is, but what I can tell you is that we were very careful, because of our consultations, not to tread into provincial jurisdiction or tread on their toes. We are working with them. I met with my provincial counterparts just last week, and they were very pleased with the announcement. They're excited because what we're doing complements what they do. Now, each of the provinces has its own interests, because immigration is a shared jurisdiction. Each has its own interests. They don't all have the same resources, of course, but Working in Canada is a nationwide document. It draws on information that is available at the federal level, and it provides a roadmap for people wherever they want to go in whatever field. And so anyone can look at, from one site, the national context, and even look for jobs. They can, and employers also can access this to help them find the skilled workers that they need.
I mean, Minister, that is just duplicating the work that Liberals did, because we put a Canada portal on this, and that was doing the same job.
No,
I'm going to divert my question to some other issue now. Could you tell me, as a minister, how much of the total citizenship and immigration funding is going to be used for, or has been used for processing ministerial permits?
No, I don't think we have that information. That we wouldn't have that information for the very simple reason that it's part of regular administrative duties that are exercised by a number of people, and it's only one part of what they do. We don't have people who, clock what they do every minute of the day. It's not something we would track. I'm sorry.
Because I can see there is something for temporary resident program, but I don't see that particular thing. I mean, or can you tell me, provide us a breakdown of ministerial permits across this country so we could verify this cost, and we could also get a better sense of how this minister has politicized the humanitarian and compassionate consideration process for partisan process.
Postal code.
I'm sorry, are you looking for ministerial permits in total? Or
yeah, if you can give me a breakdown of ministerial permits across the country so that we can see how many permits are used as a politicization for the partisan purposes. Because when I look at this situation, if you get...
It's not Mr. Grewal wanting to get a guarantee for them, right? It's not Mr. Grewal that wants to get a guarantee.
Please. Mr. Dhaliwal didn't interrupt other members when they were speaking. I would ask you to give him the same courtesy. He's out of time, but I'm going to give him another minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In fact, Minister, when I look at this situation, there are a lot more residents, because the Conservatives hold only 125 ridings, but in the other ridings, I have seen day after day that there are parents who are dying or died, and their loved ones are not allowed to come in here to attend their funerals. The fathers and mothers are not allowed to come and attend the wedding of their children. It's just so much politicized, especially during your tenure as a minister. If you can give me the breakdown, then we can figure out how much is it politicized for partisan reasons.
The vast majority of ministerial permits are granted in my name, but not by me personally, and they're granted abroad by the staff, by the departmental officials.
Thank you. Madam Fay.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a number of questions. Before I start them, I would just like to remind the committee that the bloc had made representations to the various governments since 2004 about recognition of foreign credentials, and I am delighted to learn officially that the Conservative government is going to backpedal with regard to the announcement that was made by Mr. Solberg. I have held consultations in Quebec myself, and people and organizations are very happy with the initiative that you're taking at the moment. That being said, when are you going to transfer the money so that these organizations can get their initiatives up and running so that they can go further along this road? Quebec has always been ahead of the game, ahead of other provinces on this front. We're on the right track at the moment. Prime Minister Charest made some announcements in March or May. I'm not quite sure which one it was. I can't remember the exact date, but he made announcements about what was going to be done to help immigrants integrate to the labour force more readily. But we're still waiting for the funds. These funds were announced, some $68 million that were announced, and that was announced by the Liberal government. There's been nothing to say that we won't be getting this money, but we're still waiting for the money to come through. And this is all obviously about recognition of credentials. The Auditor General filed a report in May, and in that report it was said that the government did not have a strategic plan for human resources abroad. We've also learned that there are rumours of embassies and consulates that will be shutting in certain areas of the country. And we've also heard that the government was targeting specific continents more than others when it comes to handling a request for permanent residency. Tell me, does the department have a plan? And if so, are the offices abroad facing the same problems that foreign affairs offices abroad face? And this brings me back to Quebec. Tell me how much funding goes to Quebec, and what measures are taken to respect the 25% to which we are entitled. And I have another question on another subject. I don't know, are you following me all right, Minister? Very well, everything's okay thus far. I have another question. How does the Minister determine the costs for the different immigration services? How do you decide how much a visa will cost, a temporary visa? How much do you decide how much a student visa will cost? How do you decide how much a work permit will cost? How do you decide how much a permanent residency will cost? You may not have the exact figures to hand. You could send them to us afterwards. But how are these amounts decided upon? Because what I find concerning is that there's a considerable backlog at the moment, and I want to know how you go about transferring the large sums of money that are required, that the immigrants have to pay to come to this country. How is this money decided upon? If you don't have time to answer all my questions, you can certainly get back to me. In terms of the global case management, or the overall case management situation, I got a report here on the systems architecture, and in the list of reports set out in the architecture, where are we with that? Is there any delays with that so far?
You were asking about the specific programs related to foreign credentials and money going to groups, something that we've called the Foreign Credentials Referral Program. A lot of that money is under the FRCP, and that's within the jurisdiction of Human Resources and Social Development Canada. So I'd ask that you refer your question to them. I should point out, however, that under the Canada-Quebec Accord, Quebec does have a lot of programs that they administer. They keep trying to administer more. And under that, in the main estimates, we'll be providing them with $224.4 million this year. As you're probably aware, there's a formula that determines that number, and it's not subjective, it's objectively determined. In terms of how do we calculate service charges, I'd love to help you out with that one, but as you may or may not be aware, that issue is before the courts right now, so it would be inappropriate for me to comment on that. And in terms of the management of our human resources abroad, I'll let the deputy respond to that.
If you can, because I have about 3 more people to get on here, and we're gone over by a minute, but I will allow a brief response, Mr. Fadden, if you
Tout simplement pour vous dire qu'à l'extérieur du pays,
abroad, immigration is handled by Foreign Affairs, so we follow their decisions. We've had consultations with them over the past few years. Foreign Affairs has closed down some small missions in Africa because there wasn't enough business. And so what we did in those areas was we developed partnerships with the private sector to handle the demand, and I don't think that will have an impact on citizenship and immigration. There's only one that was a bit of a problem, was at St. Petersburg, where the responsibilities of the St. Petersburg mission were transferred to Moscow, and there have been some problems on that front. As regards the case management system, I'm not quite sure for the first part of your question about the cases. Yes, there is a slight delay. It's a very complex system. We had to stop and have a health check, if you will, to check that we were on the right track, and I can send you more information written.
I'm going to reduce it now to about 4 minutes a person so that we can get the last of the questioners in. Mr. Preston.
Thank you very much, Chair. That I'll be as brief as I can so that the Minister can spend time with her answer. In the original part of the meeting, we talked a lot about the lost Canadians and what you're doing on that file, and in your original notes, you also spoke at some length about different things that are happening as far as the estimates go, and I'd like to give you a chance to discuss them further or other great things that your department's doing. You mentioned in your speech here about some $135 million in immigration settlement programs that is new to us, and I'm sure there must be more that your department's doing that's been great for Canadians. So why don't you share some of that with us?
Well, thank you for the question, and do appreciate you standing in today. We've actually achieved quite a lot. The previous government introduced a tax, if you like, of almost $1,000 per newcomer to Canada. We cut that in half. Where the settlement funding, that's money that's used to help newcomers integrate into Canadian society, where that had been, those levels had been frozen for almost a decade. We added $307 million of new money. That's good news. We've made it possible for the first time for university students to work off campus for up to 20 hours a week. Prior to that, they could work on campus, but we want to help them get involved in their communities, expand their work experience, and make them more valuable employees in the future. We've also made it possible for temporary foreign workers and for the self-same university students with experience to apply under certain conditions to stay in Canada, apply for their permanent residence from within Canada. No longer will they have to leave and make application and then come back. As well, we've made it, we've improved and streamlined the temporary foreign workers program, making it more responsive by opening up special offices in the West to help employers. We've worked with the provinces, with BC, Alberta, and Ontario, and we're in the process with others, lists of occupations under pressure, so that these are occupations where we know there's a shortage of workers. So when employers come, they're looking for a labour market opinion to say, can I bring someone in? We're going, no, you can skip that step, and go look, find your people and bring them over. We're accelerating the responsiveness to the labour market needs. So we've done a lot of things. We've also brought in Bill C-14 to help adoption and to help adopted children become Canadian citizens more readily. We've introduced Bill C-57, which is to help protect and keep newcomers to Canada from becoming sexually exploited or abused or subject to human trafficking. And then today I just announced that we want to bring forth further legislation, amendments to the Citizenship Act to help.
I think we'll, I hate to interrupt the Minister, but I'm sure there's more.
Time is
we have to move on. Mr. Tamaiti, 3.5 minutes as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Let me just say that to Mr. Batters, we certainly don't need a history lesson from somebody who's been here 3 meetings. You know, many of us have been here many meetings, and there were many Conservative members that had great experience. And the fact of the matter is that The Conservative government, what they said while they were in opposition, they totally contradicted when they came into government. Now, Minister, countries are opening up their citizenship. You only have to look to the European Union. You only have to look to what Australia has done. And it seems to me that we're sort of closing up shop in Canada. You know, we had one gentleman, Senator Romeo Dallaire. When he was asked what's the problem with lost Canadians, he referred to the bureaucratic terrorist in the system. And that is the best description I have heard. In all my years on Parliament Hill, what I was frustrated by the bureaucracy. Now, Minister, out of the 5 members on the committee, only one has had previous experience, and only one has a significant population of immigrants in their riding. You and your predecessor falls into the same category. So it seems, and this is the Conservative Party, was supposed to be sensitive to new Canadians. Minister, knowledgeable people dealt with the policy on revocation, and the former critic we should utilize was the most knowledgeable person in your department, put it very correctly in her statements when she was here, and she was a lawyer. But there isn't anybody on Parliament Hill that likes war criminals or wants war criminals in Canada. That's not what this issue is about. And if you, Minister, you believe that you are dealing with war criminals, I issue you a challenge in front of the media, is that you go outside of this room and you name 2 war criminals that you took citizenship away from, you and your deputy minister. If you guys go out there and make that statement, name names, I dare say you'll be in court so quickly that your head will spin. Now, you did do one thing somewhat of an improvement, and that is now you have finally conceded that you're going to try to do a new Citizenship Act. Well, I will assist you, and I think all the members of the committee will assist you. But I also ask upon you to call upon the Conservative members who actually have had experience on this committee, who have heard the witnesses, who have made the cross-Canada trips listening to witnesses. So I think that is very, very important. Now, Minister, there's a gentleman by the name of Charles Botstead, and he offered to assist in the drafting of new Citizenship Act. He is very, very knowledgeable, and I certainly hope that you take advantage of that. And I would like you to provide this information for me, because you have a lot of leaks in your department. To their credit, there's a lot of civil servants who are unhappy as to how the departments run. And one of the things I found out is that there was $4.9 million within the department to actually celebrate citizenship that you cancelled. So I want to get that report in front of the committee. The other one is that when CBC Radio were doing their due diligence in terms of
30 seconds if he's interested.
Well, can you just
in the minister respond?
No.
To tell him.
She can answer when she can send it in. No, okay. Mr. Chair, you allowed 7.5 minutes previously. 30 seconds more, Mr. Tillegby, and then I'm moving to. And what I want to get from here is that you guys went after CBC Radio because you said that they overstated the cases on the lost Canadians. And I understand that there's an ombudsman's report that was put out by CBC Ombudsman. This committee would like to have that report.
Order, please. Order. I have 2 more people, and I want to try and get them in. Mr. Komarnicki. Mr. Komarnicki, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And certainly, I mean, this is an example, a real live example of what's happened in the committee when the minister wants to be constructive and wants to hear suggestions how we can improve the system. We get very partisan and refer to those that are carrying out the laws and legislation and regulations as bureaucratic terrorists in light of what's happening in the world today. I think is shameful, it's disrespectful, and it's totally out of order. Here, here. And someone who's been around for that long in Parliament should know better and doesn't, and it's unfortunate that that's the case. And I think that for the 13 years that the honourable member has been involved in the government that's been here, this problem has existed. They have done nothing about the problem. They absolutely have not addressed it. And he's had ample time to do it. And in the short time that the minister has been here, they have not only addressed the issue, but has taken it. And any comments that's attributed to anyone in the department in the light of of bureaucratic terrorists is simply unacceptable. It's untrue and it's unnecessary. It is totally unfounded, and I think that the member should take that back and apologize if he was an honourable member, and he should do that. And having said that, I can say to this, the previous government had for 10 or 11 years basically frozen funding when it dealt with immigration issues and settlement issues, when this government has put $307 million, as the minister has indicated, $13 million for foreign credential recognition office, another $51 million for temporary foreign workers. And when we look at the estimates that we're looking at today, the dollars have been increased in every category in the integration program, the host program, the immigration settlement adaptation program, the resettlement assistance program. I think progress is being made. And if this particular member wishes to be less than helpful, that's fair enough. But let's let the facts speak for themselves. And I want to direct the minister to a specific question. I know the Vietnamese community were here before this committee, and they had presented a very passionate and compassionate case for them. The previous government didn't do anything for the 100 and some of them that were left in the Philippines stranded, didn't get the job done as we talked about today. They have had a very passionate case. Are you, Mr. Minister, prepared, or Madam Minister, prepared to take those into consideration and indeed see if we can find their way through?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Indeed, following the fall of Saigon in 1975, there were thousands of Vietnamese who fled their homes and ended up in the Philippines. Over the years, many countries have taken them in, and unfortunately, there are still some 150 that are still in the Philippines without status. And I was pleased to advise their representatives here just a couple of weeks ago that Canada will be processing their applications to come to Canada on humanitarian and compassionate grounds. We're expediting that process. Naturally, they'll have to meet security and criminality standards because our first duty is to protect those who are already here. But I was pleased to advise them that we will be treating them on an exceptional basis in both the family class and skilled class worker class. And we hope to have all of these applications resolved by the end of this calendar year.
Thank you. Mr. Karagiannis, 3.5 minutes.
Minister, people that are applying, that have lost their citizenship, are applying for citizenship right now. Some of them have to go through RCMP clearance. Are you aware of this?
Well, normally when someone applies for citizenship, we would have to clear them for security, safety, and health.
Minister, have you made any special arrangements with the minister responsible for the RCMP and CSIS to expedite these cases? Yes or no?
Well, if you're talking in general, or if you're talking
Lost Canadians. Have you
yes, in February we came to a verbal agreement with the RCMP that they would look at these cases, the fingerprints, on an expedited basis, and they've been doing that.
How long is expedited, Minister?
Right now it's taking 2 weeks on average.
2 weeks? Minister, I want to bring to your attention a particular individual, Kimberly Smith, although I said to her that I would not mention her. She works for Revenue Canada. She applied for her fingerprints 3 weeks ago, and to this day she hasn't heard nothing. You said 2 weeks. It's 3 weeks for that individual, Minister. And she works for Revenue Canada, and she's got clearance up and down.
Well, you may feel it appropriate to talk about individual cases. I don't. If you would come to me in private with issues like that, I would be happy to address them because this is a priority.
Minister, I'm going to tell you what your bureaucrats wrote to me this morning. Every effort will be made to fast-track everything to do with these cases, and RCMP checks are very quick these days, unless fingerprints are required. This is what a bureaucrat of yours said to me this morning from 25 St. Clair. And RCMP states the following. CFCC process more than 15,000 criminal record searches every month. The processing time is currently in excess of 150 working days. Minister, if you made a verbal commitment with your counterpart, why is that not being held up?
Well, I'd say that 2 to 3 weeks, if this case was 3 weeks, that's 15 working days. That's a lot better than the 150
I am telling you, Minister,
that you
what I
just
got
cited,
back
in
from
which
the
case I would
RCMP
suggest
today. 150
that the
days.
commitment is being honored.
Minister, RCMP today wrote back to me and said 150 working days from receipt of an application.
That would, if that is their normal time, I just couldn't comment on that.
So obviously you have not made any particular provisions with your counterpart.
Janice, I would ask you to allow the Minister a little bit of time to answer the question before moving on to your next one. Because I'm sure you're asking these questions in the hope that you might get an answer. So let the Minister answer, please.
The officials have made a verbal agreement, and which would be demonstrated by if the fact is that if it is taking 3 weeks, then that is a vast improvement over 150 days. I received
Minister,
verbal
you did not listen to me. I
that
said
it
it's
is
taken
being
3
done
weeks and she
within
hasn't
2
heard
weeks.
anything. It's been 3 weeks and she hasn't heard anything. And our CMP reply today takes 150 days.
Well,
so
that's why we've put the we have the agreement
obviously,
to
Minister, you have
accelerate
not
this
made
because of 158 days is or 150
Minister,
days.
obviously you have not made any particular deals.
We bring it to an end. You have a brief closing statement, Madam Minister.
Well, I'd just like to thank the committee once again for its work, reinforce that despite the fact that I've announced that we want to go forward with legislation in the fall, I would welcome any unanimous recommendations that you have about that legislation, because we want to make this happen. We want to make it be fair. We want to make it consistent and transparent so that we don't face these kinds of situations in the future. Thank you very much.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Did the Minister say unanimous recommendations?
Anyway, I'm not going to entertain that as a point of order because it isn't. Anyway, Madam Minister, thank you and thank your officials for being here today, and we wish you all the best in
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair,
very much.
The Minister said unanimous. I would ask for you to look at the blues, please. Mr. Chair, on a point of order, I would ask of you to look at the blues.
It's not a point of order. It's a point of contention, a point of debate, but not a point of order. I would ask the Minister and her officials to they may stay for the votes if they want, or they might move away, and we will call the votes on the estimates. So, do the Minister want to move on, and we'll get to the votes on the estimates. Okay, so this is what I call, do I?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, order please. Shall vote one less the amount of
Mr. Chair,
103 million?
Since we're over 5:30 and this meeting was supposed to go to 5:30, I would say that we come back on Thursday and vote on the estimates.
Thursday, the estimates
next meeting
are supposed to be back in the
next
House,
meeting, Mr. Chair.
Next meeting.
5:30.
Okay. I recommend that we freeze the clock to 5:30. We've got time. Shall vote one less the amount of $103,388 granted in
Chair,
interim
again,
supply.
it is 5:30. The bells are ringing for us to go to the House to vote.
Yeah, no, you can't.
You can't.
Shall vote one carry?
No, you can't have a vote.
You got no quorum.
Shall vote five
You can't
less the
have,
amount
Mr.
of
Chair,
Mr. Chair,
the committee meeting expired.
The clerk informs me I can keep going.
No,
You can't.
The committee, not unless you got unanimous consent.
Mr. Chair,
You don't have
okay, let's
unanimous
challenge the
consent.
chair.
Shall vote five less the
You don't
amount
have
of
Mr. Chair,
$305 million
Mr.
granted
Chair,
in interim
I would
supply
like,
carry.
Mr. Chair, point of order. I'd like to challenge the chair. I'd like to challenge the chair.
You're going to lose the challenge, Jimmy.
Shall vote 10 less the amount of $25 million for the 6,500 granted in interim supply
Mr. Chair, on a point of order, sir.
carry.
Mr. Chair, on a point of order.
Shall the chair report the main
Mr. Chair,
estimates to
on
the
a
House?
point of order.
Okay, let's just vote it against it. Okay, let's just vote it against
Point of order.
Mr. Chair, it's 5:30.
Bells are ringing.
Bells are ringing.
The estimates.
You got a challenge to your ruling.
No.
You
that's
have
not
a challenge to your ruling, Mr. Chair.
No, you cannot challenge.
Yes,
that
I
ruling.
can.
No, you
and this
can't.
is an issue that we went order through before, Mr. Chair.
Shall the chair
You can
report the main
challenge.
estimates to the House?
No, just vote it.
No.
Carry.
Those against?
Recorded vote.
Recorded vote, Mr.
Go for a
Chair.
recorded vote, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay.
You should go over all of those again because they weren't clear at all.
Well, it's been done now. Okay. Recorded vote on the estimates. Is that in order? Okay.
Since that was when the request was made, so it's the vote, a request on the recorded vote on for a recorded vote on reporting to the House.
Is it I think it's a recorded vote on reporting to the House.
That was the last vote we took.
Well, some members are saying yes, some are saying no. So is it a recorded vote? It is a recorded vote on the main estimates being reported to the House. All in favor? Okay. All opposed? Carried.
We adjourn.
Meeting adjourned.